In Atlanta's ultra-exclusive Lux Galleria, Dr. Simone Bowmont is stopped cold. Security eyes her $6,000 Aurora satchel and her unique style, implying theft. But here's the twist, she didn't steal it, she designed it. Yes, she's the CEO of the global brand behind the bag. Experience the viral power of #DesignWhileBlack as she challenges prejudice from the showroom floor to the highest boardrooms. Stay tuned for her incredible story. The air inside Lux Galleria hung thick and cool, a calculated contrast to the July swelter clinging to Atlanta's Peachtree Street. It smelled of money, a blend of expensive perfume, imported leather, and the faint metallic tang of aggressive air conditioning. Sunlight, filtered through the immense glass and gold atrium, scattered like shattered diamonds across the polished Italian marble floor. It was a temple built to consumption, hushed and reverent, where price tags whispered promises of exclusivity. Dr. Simone Bowmont, 34, moved through this cathedral of commerce with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged, yet simultaneously stood apart. Her caramel skin seemed to absorb the opulent light, her intricate locks, adorned with subtle gold cuffs, falling just past her shoulders. She wore a tailored cream pantsuit, sharp and modern, but it was the bag cradled in the crook of her arm that commanded attention, even here among the Birkins and Kellys. It was the Aurora satchel, her latest creation, a $6,000 testament to artistry and audacity, crafted from supple, ivory-toned Italian leather, meticulously hand-embroidered with abstract constellations in shimmering metallic thread. The hardware, gleaming clasps and feet, wasn't just gold-plated. It was fashioned from reclaimed brass salvaged from decommissioned telescopes, a nod to looking beyond, to dreaming bigger. It was a statement piece, a conversation starter, and, for Simone, the culmination of months of obsessive design and painstaking craftsmanship. It was also the flagship product of Oakland, the luxury brand she helmed as Chief Creative Officer and CEO, whose name was currently splashed across billboards dominating the Atlanta skyline. She was heading towards the Oakland boutique, a sleek, minimalist space tucked between Chanel and Gucci, its entrance flanked by dramatic floral arrangements. Her assistant, Lila Chen, walked a half-step behind, clutching a tablet displaying Simone's packed afternoon schedule. Lila, 28, Taiwanese-American, sharp and efficient, her dark bob immaculate, radiated a nervous energy that contrasted with Simone's composed stride. They hadn't quite reached the sanctuary of their own store when two figures stepped deliberately into their path, blocking the flow of sparse but wealthy foot traffic. Security guards. One was older, mid-50s, with the rigid posture and flinty gaze of someone accustomed to giving orders, Officer Danvers. His uniform was crisp, his jaw set. The other was younger, late 20s, Officer Ruiz, his name tag slightly askew. He shifted his weight, his eyes darting nervously between Simone, the bag, and his senior partner. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Ma'am," Officer Danvers began, his voice a low rumble that cut through the Galleria's ambient hush. He didn't make eye contact immediately, his gaze fixed pointedly on the Aurora satchel nestled against Simone's cream suit. The contrast was stark, the ivory leather almost luminous against her skin. Then his eyes flicked up, scanning her face, lingering for a fraction too long on her locks. "We need to verify ownership of that bag." The air seemed to crystallize. A nearby shopper, dripping in diamonds, paused mid-stride. A couple browsing a window display turned their heads. Simone felt a familiar, weary coldness seep into her bones, a sensation as unwelcome and persistent as the Atlanta humidity. It was the chilling recognition of being seen not as a person but as a problem, a suspicion. Lila gasped, stepping forward instinctively. "Excuse me? Verify what?" "This is Dr. Simone Bowmont. She designed this bag. This is her company." Her voice, usually measured, trembled with indignation. Officer Danvers ignored Lila completely, his attention solely on Simone. "Standard procedure, ma'am. We've had reports of high-value items being misplaced." The euphemism hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken accusation. Theft. Shoplifting. Things that happened, apparently, when someone who looked like Simone carried something that looked like the Aurora satchel. Simone held his gaze, her expression unreadable. Years of navigating spaces not built for her, from Oakland playgrounds to Parsons studios to Parisian ateliers, had taught her the art of the mask. Cool composure was her armor. "Reports from whom?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft, dangerously calm. And what exactly is non-standard about my presence here? Just need to see some proof of purchase. Ma'am, Danvers insisted, his hand hovering near his belt. Officer Ruiz shifted again, his discomfort palpable. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it, glancing at Danvers. A small crowd was now forming a discreet semicircle around them. Phones emerged, held low but recording. Simone saw a tourist, identifiable by his loud floral shirt and sunburn, holding his phone up quite openly, a small red light blinking. The humiliation stung, sharp and public. This wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a spectacle. Proof of purchase? Simone echoed, a flicker of disbelief crossing her features before she smoothed it away. She could have produced the digital receipt on her phone, could have called her store manager over, could have unleashed the fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. But years of experience and the echo of her mentor Hiroshi's voice, make them see your worth before they hear your voice, guided her hand. Slowly, deliberately, she shifted the Aurora satchel. Her fingers, long and graceful, found the hidden magnetic clasp of an interior pocket specially designed for quick access. The crowd leaned in slightly. Danvers watched, suspicion etched onto his face. Instead of a receipt, Simone withdrew a sleek, black card holder. From it, she produced not a credit card, but a laminated badge. It bore her photograph, her name, Dr. Simone Bowmont, and her title, Chief Executive Officer. Beneath it, the unmistakable logo of Eclat Noir, the very brand whose name adorned the massive billboards outside, the brand whose boutique stood mere yards away. She held it up, angling it so Danvers, Ruiz, and the gawking onlookers could see it clearly. This bag, Simone stated, her voice resonating with quiet authority in the suddenly silent atrium, is the proof of purchase. It came directly from the atelier. My atelier? She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. I designed it. I approved the final prototype. And this, she gestured with the badge, gives me access to every Eclat Noir facility in the world, including the one right over there. Officer Danvers stared at the badge, his face slowly draining of color. The military rigidity seemed to falter, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. He blinked, glanced at the Aurora satchel as if seeing it for the first time, then back at Simone's impassive face. Officer Ruiz looked physically ill, avoiding everyone's gaze, his eyes fixed on the marble floor. The tourist's phone remained steadily aimed. The murmurs in the crowd shifted from curiosity to disbelief, then to a low buzz of indignation directed at the guards. The woman dripping in diamonds sniffed audibly and turned away in disgust. Danvers stammered, his authoritative demeanor crumbling. Apologies, ma'am. Just doing our job. It was a weak deflection, and everyone knew it. Simone simply nodded, a curt, dismissive gesture. She slipped her badge back into its holder and returned it to the hidden pocket within the Aurora satchel. She adjusted the bag on her arm, the reclaimed brass hardware catching the light. Without another word, she turned and continued towards her boutique, Lila falling into step beside her, her face a mixture of residual anger and fierce pride. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. As they reached the entrance of Eclat Noir, Simone glanced back. Danvers was still standing there, looking lost. Ruiz was muttering something to him, shaking his head. The tourist was lowering his phone, a satisfied smirk on his face. By sunset, the video was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. #DesignWhileBlack exploded. News outlets picked it up. Simone's face, calm and resolute, holding up her CEO badge against the backdrop of luxury and suspicion, became an instant symbol of the casual, corrosive racism that permeated even the most polished corners of American life. The Aurora satchel, ironically, became the most sought-after bag of the season. But for Simone, the victory felt hollow, overshadowed by the gnawing exhaustion of having to constantly prove she belonged in spaces she herself had built. Oakland, 1999. The air in their small apartment above a bustling Fruitvale street wasn't cooled by aggressive AC, but stirred by a pair of oscillating fans battling the Bay Area summer. It smelled of frying plantains, strong Haitian coffee, hibiscus tea steeping on the counter, and the distinct, slightly metallic scent of Marie Beaumont's perpetually running sewing machine. By day, Marie stitched crisp, anonymous uniforms for the staff of downtown San Francisco hotels, miles of beige and navy polyester that paid the bills but starved her soul. By night, under the warm glow of a single lamp, the apartment transformed. Vibrant bolts of fabric unfurled like promises across the worn linoleum floor. Cottons, linens, silks in impossible blues, fiery oranges, sunburst yellows. This was when Marie truly came alive, her needle flying as she crafted intricate carabella dresses, traditional Haitian folk attire, rich with embroidery and appliqué, each stitch a story, a memory of the homeland she carried within her. Young Simone, all limbs and burgeoning curiosity at 12, would sit beside her, sorting threads, sketching designs in a dog-eared notebook, absorbing the rhythm of the machine, the scent of the hot iron, the low hum of her mother's Creole lullabies. Their small balcony overlooked a street in flux. The familiar facades of black-owned barbershops, soul food kitchens, and bookstores were disappearing, replaced by trendy cafes with minimalist signage and boutiques selling expensive, distressed denim. Construction cranes clawed at the skyline like metallic predators. Gentrification wasn't a textbook concept. It was the rising rent, the shuttered windows, the palpable sense of displacement that settled like dust on their windowsill. They paint over the murals, Simone observed one evening, watching workers whitewash a vibrant depiction of community leaders on the building opposite. Marie paused her sewing, her eyes following Simone's gaze. She sighed, a sound deep with resignation and resilience. Yo blanchi tau bagay, Sherry, she murmured. They bleach everything, darling. But they cannot bleach the color from inside us. Remember that. She tapped Simone's notebook. Put your color there. Make it so bright they cannot ignore it. Marie taught Simone more than just sewing. She taught her the language of fabric, the architecture of a garment, the power of adornment as both shield and statement. She taught her resourcefulness, how to turn scraps into beauty, how to make seams strong enough to withstand strain. She taught her pride, the quiet dignity of creating something tangible and beautiful with your own hands, even when the world seemed determined to overlook you. For years later, Simone, now 16, clutched an acceptance letter. Parsons School of Design, New York City. A full scholarship. It felt like a golden ticket, a spaceship launching her out of Oakland's orbit and into a galaxy of possibility. Marie wept tears of joy, wrapping Simone in a fierce hug that smelled of hibiscus and thread. Parsons was dazzling, overwhelming, and brutally competitive. It was also achingly white. Simone, with her Oakland edge, her deep understanding of construction learned not in sterile classrooms but at her mother's knee, and her designs pulsating with the vibrant colors and textures of her heritage, felt like an anomaly. Her initial portfolio, filled with sketches inspired by carabella patterns, repurposed denim, and beadwork techniques learned from her mother, was met with polite confusion, sometimes outright condescension. Elise Whitaker, a classmate with aggressively highlighted hair and a trust fund, drawled during one critique, "Your urban aesthetic is interesting, Simone. Very niche. Perhaps a bit too loud for high fashion." The word urban was wielded like a weapon, a coded dismissal meant to ghettoize her vision. Simone felt the familiar coldness creep in, the urge to shrink, to conform. But then she'd remember Marie's hands, stained with indigo dye, turning simple cloth into royalty. She'd remember the whitewashed mural. Her refuge became the cramped, cluttered workshop of Hiroshi Tanaka, a 72-year-old Japanese-American tailor who taught an elective course on advanced draping and construction. He was a legend, a quiet master who had dressed film stars and first ladies before semi-retiring to mentor students. His own family had been interned during World War II. He understood displacement, the sting of being othered. Hiroshi's workshop smelled of old wood, steaming wool, and beeswax. He rarely spoke above a murmur, but his hands moved with breathtaking precision. He saw the frustration simmering beneath Simone's polite smiles, the raw talent straining against the narrow confines of expectation. One afternoon, as Simone struggled to drape a particularly unforgiving piece of silk, feeling Elisa's earlier comments echoing in her mind, Hiroshi placed a gentle hand over hers. "They want you to be small," he said, his voice soft but resonant. "They want you to dilute your vision, make it palatable for them. Easier to categorize, easier to dismiss." He picked up a piece of her early beadwork, turning it over in his calloused fingers. "This has fire. This has history. Don't let them extinguish it." He guided her hands back to the silk. "The technique must be flawless, impeccable. When the craftsmanship is undeniable, they cannot attack the foundation. Let the structure be your shield." He paused, meeting her eyes. "But do not hide the fire. Weave it in. Subtly at first, perhaps. A lining that only you know holds the vibrant pattern. A detail in the construction that speaks your language. Blend your resilience with that subtlety. Make them see your worth, admire the beauty before they even have a chance to hear your voice and try to silence it." Hiroshi taught her to channel her frustration into precision, her heritage into innovation. He showed her how to incorporate the structure of traditional Japanese garments, the intricate embroidery techniques of her Haitian roots, the sharp tailoring of Seville Row, all fused with her unique, modern perspective. He taught her that true luxury wasn't just about expensive materials, it was about artistry, intention, and the story embedded within the stitches. Simone learned to navigate Parsons, her designs becoming sharper, more sophisticated, yet always retaining that core of defiant color, that echo of Marie's workshop, that subtle fire Hiroshi had encouraged her not to extinguish. She graduated top of her class, Elise Whitaker offering a tight-lipped, envious congratulations. The niche aesthetic was suddenly being hailed as visionary. But Simone never forgot the sting of dismissal, the pressure to conform, or the quiet wisdom of the old tailor who taught her to build shields out of silk and stitches. The Oakland Boardroom occupied the penthouse floor of a sleek skyscraper overlooking Central Park. The view was breathtaking, a panorama of urban power, but the room itself felt sterile, almost surgical. A vast, obsidian-black table dominated the space, reflecting the cold, recessed lighting. The air hummed with the low thrum of the building's climate control, carrying the faint, expensive scent of Richard Carmichael's signature cologne, something aggressively clean and vaguely citrusy, a stark contrast to the memory of hibiscus tea and hot irons. Simone sat at the head of the table opposite Carmichael. The Aurora satchel, now an emblem of viral outrage, rested pointedly on the gleaming surface beside her laptop. Arrayed along the table's considerable length were the other board members, all white, all male, save for Priya Kapoor, the chief financial officer. They were studies in expensive tailoring and calculated expressions, their faces a mixture of concern, annoyance, and carefully veiled condescension. The Atlanta incident, the #DesignWhileBlack hashtag, Marcus Green's subsequent expose, it had all created a PR storm Eclat Noir couldn't ignore. Green, a sharp freelance journalist known for his unflinching look at systemic inequalities, hadn't just reported on Simone's humiliation, he'd contextualized it. Weaving in data on racial profiling incidents in luxury retail spaces across Chicago, Miami, and Houston, painting a damning picture of an industry built on exclusivity often enforced through bias. Richard Carmichael, CEO, a man in his early 60s with carefully silvered hair and the practiced sincerity of a politician, leaned forward, steepling his fingers. He cultivated an image as a woke capitalist, quick to deploy buzzwords like diversity and inclusion, especially when they aligned with market trends. Simone. First, let me reiterate how appalled, truly appalled, we all were by what happened in Atlanta. He began, his voice smooth as polished marble. Unacceptable. Danvers has been suspended pending investigation, of course. Lux Galleria issued a public apology. But we need to be proactive. Turn this unfortunate incident into a teachable moment. A positive narrative. He slid a glossy proposal across the table. We're thinking a multi-platform campaign. Title, Luxury is for Everyone. Featuring you, naturally. Your story. Your resilience. Maybe a limited edition version of the Aurora with a portion of proceeds going to an appropriate charity. It shows solidarity, controls the narrative, reinforces the brand's commitment to. Simone held up a hand, cutting him off mid-platitude. The carefully constructed calm she'd maintained in Atlanta was gone, replaced by a simmering, righteous anger she no longer felt obligated to suppress. Richard, she said, her voice low but carrying easily across the vast table, let me be unequivocally clear. I will not be your diversity prop. My humiliation is not a marketing opportunity. This isn't about turning a negative into a positive PR spin. This is about the systemic rot that allows incidents like this to happen with soul-crushing regularity, not just to me, but to countless Black people who dare to exist in spaces deemed too good for them. She gestured towards the proposal with undisguised contempt. Luxury is for everyone? Only if you look the part, apparently. Only if you don't make the security guards nervous. This campaign is hollow. It's lipstick on a pig. A stunned silence fell over the boardroom. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Carmichael's practiced smile tightened at the edges. Now, Simone, he said, his tone hardening slightly. Let's not be overly dramatic. We're offering a platform, significant resources. You're offering to capitalize on my lived experience of racism while doing nothing to address the underlying issues within this company or the industry, Simone countered, her gaze sweeping across the sea of white male faces. Look around this table, Richard. Where's the diversity? Where's the inclusion beyond token gestures? How many Black designers do we employ? How many Black executives sit on this board besides me? How many of our advertising campaigns feature genuinely diverse representations of beauty, Not just palatable, light-skinned stand-ins. Priya Kapoor, seated midway down the table, watched Simone intently, a flicker of something recognition, perhaps solidarity in her dark eyes. Priya, Indian-American, sharp and analytical, had navigated the corporate labyrinth with fierce intelligence. But Simone knew she faced her own set of challenges, the double bind of race and gender in high finance. What I demand, Simone continued, leaning forward, her voice charged with intensity, is not a PR campaign. I demand accountability. Mandatory, comprehensive anti-bias training for all retail staff, corporate employees, and security personnel contracted by this company nationwide. A transparent review of hiring and promotion practices to identify and dismantle barriers for BIPOC talent. A commitment to diversifying our supply chain, partnering with minority-owned businesses. And a fundamental shift in how we define and market luxury, moving away from exclusionary tactics towards genuine inclusivity. Carmichael scoffed lightly. Simone, that's ambitious. And potentially costly. We need to consider the shareholders, the bottom line. The bottom line? Simone's laugh was short, sharp, and devoid of humor. The video of me being racially profiled while carrying our $6,000 bag went viral globally. Marcus Green's article citing profiling data is being shared by the thousands. What do you think that does to the bottom line, Richard? To the brand's reputation among the very demographics you claim to want to attract? My generation sees through performative allyship. They demand authenticity. You don't get to monetize my rage or my resilience without doing the actual work. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with one of Hiroshi's tailoring shears. Later that evening, Simone received a discreet message from Priya asking to meet for coffee away from the office. They met at a small cafe downtown, far from the corporate towers. Priya, stirring her chai latte, looked troubled. Simone, what you did in there today, it was necessary. Brave. But you need to be careful. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. I overheard Carmichael talking with Harrison and Forbes. She named two of the most influential board members after the meeting. They're rattled. Not because they genuinely care about the injustice, but because you're becoming unpredictable. A liability. Priya hesitated, then continued, there's talk. Quiet talk, for now. About phasing you out. Bringing in someone. Safer. Someone with a strong design background, yes, but someone who won't rock the boat. Someone, frankly, whiter. Simone absorbed the information. A cold knot tightening in her stomach. It wasn't entirely unexpected, but hearing it confirmed stung. Priya sighed, her gaze distant for a moment. It's always something, isn't it? The hoops we have to jump through. She looked back at Simone. My own sister, she's stunning, brilliant, runs a successful textile business in Mumbai. Ikla was looking for an India ambassador last year. They flew her to Paris, wined and dined her. Then feedback came through unofficial channels, authentically Indian, yes, but perhaps a shade too dark for the brand's global image. They went with a Bollywood actress with much lighter skin. The casual cruelty of it, the insidious nature of colorism layered onto racial bias, left Simone momentarily speechless. It wasn't just about being black, it was about proximity to whiteness, about fitting into narrow, Eurocentric standards of beauty and acceptability even within communities of color. Lila Chen, Simone's assistant, faced her own subtle pressures. Her parents, proud immigrants who had sacrificed immensely for her education, couldn't understand why she worked for a black woman in an industry they perceived as frivolous and unstable. Why not law school, Lila, her mother would ask. Or work for a nice, established company? This, fashion, and with her, is it respectable? The unspoken prejudice, the internalized anti-blackness absorbed from navigating America as Asian immigrants, pained Lila, creating a rift she struggled to bridge. She admired Simone fiercely, but the constant disapproval from home wore on her. Simone looked at Priya, seeing not just a colleague, but an ally forged in the shared fires of navigating hostile spaces. So, they want a safer face, Simone said softly, a dangerous glint in her eye. They think they can just replace me, erase the disruption. She took a sip of her cooling coffee. They have underestimated me. They have underestimated the women who taught me how to stitch resilience into every scene. Simone didn't just walk away from the boardroom table, she flew. Not in retreat, but in search of grounding, of recalibration. She landed in Detroit, a city etched with the scars of deindustrialization but pulsating with a fierce, undeniable heartbeat of resilience and reinvention. It felt worlds away from the sterile opulence of New York boardrooms and Atlanta gallerias. Here, grit wasn't a flaw, it was foundational. Through contacts made during her research into sustainable and ethical manufacturing, she found the Detroit Stitchers Collective. Housed in a repurposed brick warehouse in a neighborhood slowly pushing back against blight, the collective wasn't a typical factory. It was a worker-owned cooperative, a vibrant hub primarily composed of Black and Latina seamstresses, many of whom had honed their skills over decades in the now-shuttered automotive upholstery plants or local garment factories. The air inside smelled of machine oil, strong coffee, roasted chiles from someone's lunch, and the focused energy of creation. Laughter mingled with the rhythmic hum of industrial sewing machines. Simone, initially intending just to observe and perhaps commission a small sample run, found herself drawn into the collective's collaborative spirit. She saw echoes of her mother's work ethic, the same pride in craftsmanship, the same resourcefulness born of necessity. She saw women supporting each other, sharing skills, childcare tips, and dreams over shared cutting tables. She shared her story, the Atlanta incident, the boardroom confrontation, the threat of being pushed out. She spoke of her frustration with a luxury industry that fetishized Black culture while marginalizing Black creators, that preached sustainability while perpetuating inequality. The women listened, nodding with recognition. They knew intimately the sting of being undervalued, overlooked, exploited. They knew the precariousness of livelihoods dependent on fickle markets and indifferent corporations. An idea began to spark, fueled by the collective's energy and Simone's own simmering defiance. What if they created something together? Not just a handbag, but a statement. A collection born from shared experience, crafted from materials imbued with meaning. Thus began the Reclamation line. Simone didn't just dictate designs, she collaborated. She listened to the women's stories, learned about their lives, their skills, their heritage. They decided the materials themselves would tell a story of diasporic resilience. They sourced sturdy, raw cotton canvas from a Black-owned farm in Georgia, reminiscent of the crop whose brutal history was inextricably linked to Black American life, now reclaimed for creation. They incorporated salvaged steel hardware, gleaned from the remnants of Baltimore's deindustrialized docks, transformed into gleaming accents, a symbol of finding strength and beauty in the ruins of industry. They experimented with natural dyes derived from indigo, cochineal, and marigold, colors rich with cultural significance across the African and Latin diasporas. One of the youngest members of the collective, Aisha Morales, a 23-year-old single mother of Mexican and Puerto Rican heritage, approached Simone hesitantly one afternoon. Aisha possessed a quiet intensity and a natural eye for design, often sketching ideas during her lunch breaks. She unfolded a drawing for a unique baby sling bag, stylish and practical, but with cleverly concealed, reinforced compartments. It's for carrying things, Aisha explained, her voice soft but firm. Important things, like birth certificates, passports, emergency contacts, lawyers' numbers. She looked down at her hands. My cousin. Ice took her husband last year. She didn't have their papers ready, didn't know who to call. Everything was chaos. She looked back up, meeting Simone's eyes. Moms like me, we need to be prepared. This bag, it's like armor. But beautiful. Simone was deeply moved. Aisha's design wasn't just functional, it was a poignant reflection of the lived realities and anxieties faced by immigrant communities, a testament to maternal preparedness in the face of systemic threats. It embodied the spirit of reclamation, taking fear and weaving it into strength. Lila Chin, who had flown out to Detroit to assist Simone, initially struggled with Aisha's concept. It's powerful, Simone, but is it luxury? She'd asked privately, her voice laced with uncertainty. It feels very specific, very ethnic. The word hung in the air, echoing Elise Whitaker's dismissal years ago. Simone saw the internalized bias at play, the ingrained notion that luxury had to be detached, universal in a way that often meant universally white or European, stripped of specific cultural or political context. Simone gently challenged her. Lila, what is luxury? Is it just a price tag and a European label? Or is it craftsmanship, intention, story? Is it resonance? Aisha's design speaks to a reality millions face. It's born from resilience. Isn't that a powerful story? Isn't that a form of luxury, the luxury of safety, of preparedness, beautifully rendered? Lila wrestled with it. Watching Aisha meticulously stitch a prototype, hearing other women share stories of relatives facing deportation scares, seeing the fierce pride in their work, she began to understand. Her parents' anxieties about respectability, their subtle disapproval of Simone, her own initial dismissal of Aisha's design, it was all tangled together, a web of assimilated biases she needed to unravel. She started spending more time with Aisha, asking about her daughter, Luz, learning snippets of Spanish, recognizing the shared anxieties of daughters trying to navigate parental expectations and forge their own paths. Her admiration for Simone deepened, transforming from professional respect into a fierce, protective loyalty. As prototypes for the Reclamation line took shape, structured totes made from Georgia cotton lined with vibrant, hand-dyed patterns, sleek cross-body bags accented with Baltimore steel, Aisha's ingenious madre sling. Simone felt a creative energy she hadn't experienced since her early days sketching alongside her mother. This wasn't about corporate profit margins or appeasing a board, it was about authentic creation, community, and resistance. News of the project inevitably reached Eclat Noir's headquarters. Richard Carmichael, likely spurred by the disgruntled board, dispatched the lawyers. A cease and desist letter arrived via courier, thick with legal jargon, accusing Simone of violating her non-compete clause and infringing on Eclat Noir's intellectual property. Claiming the use of specific construction techniques and aesthetic elements developed during her tenure were proprietary. Simone, Aisha, Lila, and several senior members of the collective gathered around the letter spread out on a cutting table littered with fabric scraps and steel hardware. The threat felt like a cold wave washing over the warmth of their collaboration. But Simone wasn't the same woman who had faced down Officer Danvers in Atlanta or the board in New York. Detroit had fortified her. The collective had emboldened her. Intellectual property? Simone scoffed, picking up a piece of the reclaimed steel. They want to claim ownership of resilience? Of salvaged history? She looked around at the determined faces of the women. They think they can intimidate us into silence. She pulled out her phone. Lila's eyes widened as she realized what Simone was doing. We're going live, Simone announced. She propped the phone against a spool of thread, hit the record button on Instagram Live and dialed Eclat Noir's lead counsel. Thousands of people tuned in almost instantly, drawn by the notification or the rapidly spreading shares. Simone put the call on speakerphone. Mr. Davenport, Simone began, her voice calm and clear. Simone Bowmont here. I'm calling from Detroit, alongside the artisans of the Detroit Stitchers Collective. We've just received your rather aggressive letter. The lawyer, clearly caught off guard, stammered, Dr. Bowmont, this is highly irregular. What's irregular, Mr. Davenport? Simone interrupted, panning the phone slightly to show the diverse group of women standing with her, their faces resolute. Is a luxury brand attempting to legally suppress a collaborative project between its former Black CEO and a cooperative of Black and Latina seamstresses? A project, I might add, that utilizes reclaimed materials and tells stories of cultural resilience, concepts I highly doubt are listed in Eclat Noir's portfolio of proprietary assets. She held up Aisha's prototype sling. Are you claiming Eclat Noir owns the design for a bag meant to help mothers protect their families from ICE raids? Because that would be a fascinating legal argument, and one I'm sure the press. She glanced meaningfully at her phone's screen, where viewer numbers were skyrocketing and comments were flooding in, overwhelmingly supportive. Would be very interested in exploring. The lawyer sputtered, backtracking rapidly, promising further review and internal discussion. Simone ended the call, looking directly into the camera. The Reclamation line is not just about handbags, she said, her voice ringing with passion. It's about reclaiming our narratives, our labor, our power. We will not be silenced. We will not be intimidated. The live stream exploded. Hashtag Reclaim the Stitch trended alongside hashtag Detroit Stitchers Collective. The public backlash against Eclat Noir was swift and brutal. Faced with another PR nightmare, far worse than the first, Carmichael and the board were forced back to the table. This time, they weren't dictating terms, they were negotiating. Simone, backed by the collective and an outpouring of public support, finally had leverage. The Apollo Theater. Not a sterile gallery or a pretentious Parisian salon, but hallowed ground. The air in the legendary Harlem venue vibrated with history, thick with the ghosts of Billie Holiday's blues, James Brown's funk, Ella Fitzgerald's scat. Tonight, it belonged to Simone Bowmont and the Detroit Stitchers Collective. Tonight, it was the stage for the Reclamation line. Backstage was a controlled chaos of focused energy. Models of all sizes, shapes, ages, and shades of black and brown beauty, professional models standing alongside women from the Detroit Collective, radiating pride and nervousness, were getting final touches. The scent of hairspray mingled with the earthy aroma of the Georgia cotton bags and the faint metallic tang of the Baltimore steel hardware. Simone moved through the space, adjusting a strap here, offering a word of encouragement there, her heart pounding a rhythm against her ribs that matched the distant bass line filtering in from the front of house. Lila, ever efficient but now with a newfound warmth in her interactions, coordinated schedules, fielded press inquiries, and gave Aisha a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. Aisha, dressed in a stunning dress she'd made herself, was trying to peek through the curtain at the assembling audience, her daughter Luz, wide-eyed and clutching a small sketchbook clinging to her hand. Hiroshi Tanaka was there, frail now and wheelchair-bound, but his eyes sharp and proud behind his spectacles. He had flown in from California, bundled against the New York chill. Seeing him, Simone felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She knelt beside his chair. "Sensei," she whispered, taking his frail hand. "Thank you." He patted her hand, his voice a soft rasp. "You found the fire, Simone-chan, and you learned to build with it. Beautifully." In the front row, Tasha Jenkins sat with quiet dignity. An activist whose teenage son, unarmed, had been killed by police years earlier, she had connected with Simone after the Atlanta incident. One of the most poignant pieces in the collection was a crossbody bag lined with fabric digitally printed with a subtle, abstracted pattern derived from the hoodie her son had been wearing that fateful night. It was a memorial, a protest, a refusal to let his memory fade, stitched into the very fabric of the collection. Simone had sought Tasha's blessing, and Tasha had given it, seeing it not as exploitation but as amplification. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the packed theater. Then the unmistakable opening chords of Nina Simone's Four Women filled the space, raw, powerful, aching. The first model emerged. Tall, regal, dark-skinned, carrying a structured tote crafted from the Georgia cotton, its steel hardware gleaming under the spotlight. She moved with purpose, her gaze direct. More followed, a procession of defiant beauty. Women with afros, braids, locks, hijabs. Women with curves, slender women, older women whose faces held lifetimes of stories. They carried the bags not as mere accessories, but as shields, as declarations. Aisha's madre sling looked both elegant and fiercely protective on a model who walked with resolute grace. The bag lined with the memory of Tasha Jenkins' son elicited audible gasps, then a wave of somber understanding. The collection was a triumph. It was bold, innovative, impeccably crafted, yet deeply rooted in lived experience. It wasn't just fashion, it was testimony. The audience, a mix of fashion insiders, activists, community members, artists, and journalists, was rapt, many visibly moved. As the final model walked, Nina Simone's voice echoing the pain and resilience of generations, Simone herself stepped onto the stage, flanked by the women of the Detroit Stitchers Collective. The applause was deafening, a standing ovation that felt less like polite appreciation and more like a roar of solidarity. After the show, amid the throng of well-wishers, Richard Carmichael appeared, looking diminished under the Apollo's historic weight. He offered Simone a strained smile and another apology, this one sounding marginally less hollow than the last, coupled with a vague offer to discuss future collaborations. Simone met his gaze, the noise of the crowd fading for a moment. "Richard," she said, her voice clear and steady, "I appreciate you coming, but my future is not with Eclat Noir." She turned back to the microphone, tapping it lightly to regain the room's attention. The buzz subsided expectantly. "Tonight," she announced, her voice ringing through the theater, "was not just the debut of the Reclamation line. It marks a new beginning. I am officially resigning from Eclat Noir." A collective gasp went through the room. Effective immediately, I am launching the Bowmont Collective, a design incubator and worker cooperative partnership dedicated to nurturing and amplifying marginalized voices in fashion and design. Our first partners, she gestured proudly to the women beside her, are the incredible artisans of the Detroit Stitchers Collective. Another wave of applause, louder this time, surged through the Apollo. Priya Kapoor, standing near the stage, caught Simone's eye and gave her a subtle, approving nod. Lila beamed, tears welling in her eyes. Officer Ruiz, no longer in uniform but wearing a volunteer badge for a community bail fund, stood near the back, clapping enthusiastically. He'd found Simone online after the live stream, sending her a message about how the incident had been the catalyst for him leaving the force, unable to stomach the casual bigotry he witnessed daily. Later, as the theater slowly emptied, Simone found Aisha standing quietly to the side, watching her daughter. Luz wasn't clinging anymore. She was sitting on the edge of the stage, her small sketchbook open on her lap, pencil flying across the page. Simone walked over and glanced down. Luz was sketching a handbag, a fantastical creation with wings and hidden pockets, rendered with surprising detail. Aisha smiled, a tired but hopeful expression on her face. She wants to be like you when she grows up. Simone's heart swelled. She looked from Luz's concentrated face to the emptying theater, feeling the weight of the past and the promise of the future settle onto her shoulders. It was a heavy load, but one she felt ready to carry. Back in her hotel room, long after the adrenaline had faded, Simone unpacked her personal briefcase. It wasn't any Claude Noir design, but something simpler, older. Tucked inside, carefully preserved, was a small swatch of faded blue fabric intricately embroidered, a piece of her mother's last unfinished Carabella dress. Marie had passed away suddenly from an aneurysm during Simone's final year at Parsons, never seeing the heights her daughter would reach nor the battles she would fight. Simone gently removed the swatch and tucked it into a hidden pocket inside the lining of her own briefcase. A new design she was developing for the Bowmont collective. She ran her fingers over the familiar, slightly frayed edge of the Haitian cotton, the tiny, perfect stitches her mother's hands had made. Some threads, she thought, tracing the resilient pattern, refused to be cut. They were woven into her past, her present, and the future she was determined to stitch into existence.